Hello and welcome to episode 9 of Forensic Fix, a podcast brought to you from MSAB, where we invite guests from the industry to discuss the latest news in DFIR, current issues, and a general chat around all things digital forensics and investigations. So I'm your host, Adam Firman, tech evangelist here with MSAB. Today's podcast is going to be a little different for our guest. He is used to being on this side of the mic and asking the questions, so it's going to feel strange for him today to be on the other end. So without further ado, I'm delighted to say that today's guest is Kevin Delong from Cyber Social Hub. Kevin will be well known to most of you from North America, but here is a little insight into his impressive career. So Kevin was with Lima Police, the data started back in 1998, whereby you worked several roles before becoming an investigator and a forensic examiner. So since your time in law enforcement, you've been involved in instructing, and you've also been involved with Access Data FTK as a product manager and a VP of mobile forensics. Kevin's passion for technology and podcasting made him change directions a little bit, where Kevin got into digital marketing before setting up Cyber Social Hub in January of 2020, where it continues to grow each week with a great community. So, Kevin, I've given our listeners a small insight into your impressive career. So for those of our listeners who aren't in North America and may not be familiar with yourself or aware of Cyber Social Hub, can you give us some more details about your past, your career path, and how you got to your current role?
Sure. And you make it sound all proper. I appreciate that. It was really more of a roller coaster ride than the way you made it sound. And so I appreciate that to begin with. It started back, like you said, in 1998 when, man, it's been a minute now. Thanks for reminding me of that. I appreciate that as well. When I first got into law enforcement, I was actually in a couple of years prior to that, just working as a civilian in the police department. I'm just kind of seeing, do I like this or not? Is this some chaos I want to get into? And, the crazy side of me said, yeah, absolutely. Let's go ahead and do that. Of course, policing was a different game back then than it is today in the US, at least in my opinion.
Yeah.
And digital forensics came along really just a couple years after I was on the department, as I was the one that could turn on the big ugly beige box without it blowing up.
Yeah.
So that's really how.
So you passed the first test.
You're right. And, it makes us sound like a bunch of Neanderthals or something, but it's pretty accurate. I was attached to a drug unit at the time. We were doing narcotic investigations. And the need was obviously there. I mean, there were flip phones, for crying out loud. We needed to figure out these things immediately to pull data off of them. So, of course, they sent me to all sorts of training using all sorts of software, pretty much everything out on the market. And that's where the law enforcement career went from there. Then,
were you lucky enough to travel a lot with your initial training? Because I remember when I joined my forensic unit, my colleagues had been to Sacramento for their black bag course and been to Sweden for their MSAB course. Whereas when I started my courses, they were all housed locally in the UK. So I got zero travel.
Well, if you consider NW3C's facility in nowhere, West Virginia, like backwoods, then yes, I have seen where Bigfoot lives. I can honestly say that. But no, I didn't. I guess it was a little bit. It was nothing really exciting travel-wise, a few local areas. Of course, I'm speaking in the U.S. perspective, where U.S. is a massive. One of our states is the size of some countries. But it's all pretty similar of how people act. Little. If you get down too far down south, then things get awkward. But other than that, I'm joking. People get upset at me. But it was interesting. And then a little company, and I don't know if people remember that anymore. I'm starting to date myself, and I'm going to date you. You may remember this. There's a little company called MFI that was training mobile phone forensics. And they were very good at it. I took my training through them here in Ohio, in the U.S. I don't remember what year that was now, but I met Carl at that point, and he was running the company. He in turn sold it to Lee Reber at that point, and they were looking for someone to help with instruction. So myself and Danny Garcia were hired on to help, and that's when the real travel kicked in. Was hold on for that ride when we started training. So I saved every piece of vacation just to travel and teach, because at the time, I don't know what the going rate is for contractors today's world, but it was $1,000 a day we would make. And I'm like, oh, heck yes. From little tiny Lima, Ohio, of population of 60,000, to making $1,000 a day just talking, which is something I love to do anyway. Then no, it was really interesting, and that's kind of how I slid over into that world.
Yeah.
And then from there, obviously, Access Data at the time, when it was still around, which it is in another form, but they purchased MFI, so we got absorbed by MFI, and they luckily found positions for all of us, which was very nice of them to do. And they were looking to, increase their mobile presence at that point. And so it was a fun ride over there. I learned a lot. I had a lot of mentors, a lot of great people taught me some amazing things about business, because something I did not know anything about.
Yeah.
I was former U.S. military, and then police. I was I guess the epitome of a Neanderthal. And then a few things that some people don't know about my early career was I was actually in radio broadcasting. And I did that for 7 years here in the U.S. in Atlantic City, New Jersey, and then in Ohio as well. So obviously our own podcast and being on your podcast is something really second nature to it. Talking in a room by yourself, right? That's what radio really all is.
It is quite hard work to begin with, talking to yourself.
Yeah, it's interesting. And finding topics. What I find difficult is a lot of times you don't know if you're engaging well with the audience is probably the biggest challenge in that. But yeah. And then from Access Data, I decided I didn't want to go back to work for corporate. It didn't fit my personality. Nothing against it. It seems to be just fine for everyone else. It's just something that I didn't want to do. So that's when I just started a company called Avera Solutions, and which is still the primary company to Cyber Social Hub. It owns Cyber Social Hub. And one of the biggest challenges that I did see was that it seemed like companies didn't understand how to talk to either digital forensic folks well, or to the law enforcement crowd well. And well, hey, I came from both, and I like to talk. So a marketing company seemed logical. Of course, with my background in radio, it also helped. And that's how really that got going. And we had a few initial clients right away within the first couple of weeks. So I was very, very blessed of starting my own company and people wanting to.
Because it is a very niche market, isn't it? Because somebody with all the skills fully qualified in marketing can get into this industry, but it will be completely different to anything that they have done before. Because like you say, your majority dealing with law enforcement, which is a very niche market in itself, and the digital forensic market is very niche. So you're correct in what you say that you had both skill sets, so you were extremely blessed.
Yeah, I came from the world, so and that's what setting through some law enforcement training, we'd always have when I was in law enforcement full time. We'd have some instructor come in from the outside, has never set foot out on patrol, never done anything, and they're trying to teach us how to do things. And all of us are just sitting in the back of the room, kind of just rolling our eyes. Like, really, how can you teach us how the proper way to do something if you've never been out there? And that was the attitude, and it still is. Law enforcement by nature is just not very trusting. But however, they're very trusting of their own kind, which is, it still sounds weird to say it out loud, but it's because they've known, hey, that you've been there, you've done that. I've done stints on the drug units, and I was on SWAT for a number of years, which was quite interesting, of getting flashbangs blow up by my feet. And, it was a lot of fun. The guys I worked with were amazing people. And that's the one thing I missed from law enforcement was the people, the folks I worked with out there. Good people. But yeah, and then I started this company up, and I've always had the affinity for groups like HTCIA. I've been a member and have been a member for a very long time. Um, and I was looking, it's like, okay, so people that can't necessarily travel, or how does someone like myself, essentially at a fairly, I think it was a medium-sized department, how does someone like me find budget, find resources to answer some of these chaotic questions in digital investigations? At the time, it was simply computers and phones, but now it's obviously expanded out considerably with OSINT, with IoT devices. There's
Yeah.
a million other things. And finding resources for these smaller guys, and that's the majority of departments around the world,
Yeah.
is these smaller agencies with little resources, and nobody wants to send their evidence away and magically get it back with the case solved. They want to know how it did it. They want that control. So I got the idea of, and what I did is I just kind of looked around. Obviously, there's organizations like LinkedIn, right, and then Facebook. And there's massive organizations that's thrown a lot of money at this problem already to connect people. So what we did is looked at their models, changed it a little bit to what we thought was proper. Like, we don't sell anyone's information ever
Yeah.
or let anyone get it. One of the big things. And we decided to start Cyber Social Hub up. And like you said, I remember when we hit our first 200 members, I was jumping up and down ecstatic, just thrilled to death that there'd be 200 people interested in what we were trying to put together
Yeah.
there. And really what Cyber Social Hub is, and I don't know if I prefaced that well, it's just an online community for digital investigators. No matter what you're investigating, whether you're law enforcement or not, because I do think that's important to not leave law enforcement, because that's a really expanding market of people that maybe need some help. But we do have a little lockdown area that you do have to be law enforcement. You have to apply to get in, just because there can be some sensitive
Yeah.
stuff in there, and things like that. So we locked that down, just for our coppers out there. Um, it's really a place to go and try to learn or share your knowledge. At this point, I'm at that. Well, I've passed that teeter point where I could share some of my knowledge. Now it's been 11 years since I've done an actual investigation, so I'm learning more from the people that are in there, and it's just grown rapidly. We just crossed over a month or so ago our 4,000 members. So
That's
it's
fantastic numbers.
yeah, it's fairly large, and it's still growing a little each day, which is a pretty amazing thing. And it was designed to be ran to self-govern, essentially, um, and be ran by the community members. Now, obviously,
Yeah.
myself, my staff are in there quite a bit just to make sure everything's in there. We've only had, essentially one incident of someone posting anime or some weirdness that we quickly removed. Uh,
Yeah.
but that's bound to happen when you start getting a little popularity of things, and that's really what it is our reason is to give back to the community and give free resources. So we have webinars, we have our own podcast, which you've been on and participated in multiple times, I believe. um, and it's just out there for people to hopefully gain a piece of information that they haven't had before, and they don't have to pay $1 million to get access to that information. That
Yeah.
was really the goal.
No, that's good. And this podcast is going to be released in October, and Cyber Social Hub has got an event in December. Do you want to share with the listeners ahead of time what you've got coming up?
Sure, exactly. We obviously this all started during COVID. Every event was shut down, and I've been going to events for as long as I've been in forensics. With Techno being the first one, big one that I went to, and then now branched out to a bunch of different ones. And all of those events were being closed down for at least 2 years, at least. So we were thinking, it's like, how hard would it be with my background in technology, my background in marketing, and background in just talking to myself in a room by myself? How hard would it be to create an online conference? So we did a little bit of research on homework, and some of the platforms were just insane. Obviously, giving away everything for free doesn't necessarily give us a large budget to work with. So what we did was kind of hodgepodge some things together and created this online experience. In the first year, we had just over 200 people, which I think was it? Yeah, it was 2020, I think 2020, I think, was the first year, and that went really well. And then the next year we had I can't remember the numbers. I think it was close to 600 people. It really jumped the second year of people attending. We lined up some great speakers. And usually it was me pulling my friend card out to a lot of people in the industry that I knew. I was like, please come, just speak at this event. It's, it'll take 50 minutes of your time. And a lot of people showed up, which I'm very grateful for the people in the industry. They are always happy to help, which is great. And so this last year, we kept it going, even though obviously COVID's in full retreat for the moment.
For the moment.
Yeah, I did add that, right? Qualification.
You did.
Okay. So last year we had, 870 people register for the event. Again, we don't charge for it. It's absolutely free for all the attendees. And people always ask me, well, how in the world do you make money off of this? What shadiness are you doing, Kevin? It's like I said, we adopted
the cynical police.
Yeah.
Cynical police.
Exactly. It's like we're selling your information and those of your children. No, I'm kidding. We don't do that. But there are sponsors that come in and sponsor the event. They help pay for the servers. They help pay for the streaming. They help do all of that stuff. My staff especially puts a lot of hours into to getting everything set up. And so that's how it's all done. Now in Cyber Social Hub overall, we never give or sell your information away. But if you sign up, for example, MSABs give in webinars. If somebody signs up for that, we have a clear disclaimer, not even really small. It's pretty large. It says, hey, whatever email that you sign up with, MSAB is going to get that information. And people understand that. They know, hey, that's fine. I can hit unsubscribe if I don't want to be part of that. That's fine. And that's been the understanding. It's worked really well. And Cyber Social Con is going to be December 13th and 14th. And as of our recording here, registration will definitely be open by the time it goes live. So all you have to do is just do a search for Cyber Social Con. We do own that domain, and we own Cyber Social Hub. We'll have it up there as well, and you can register for the event, and it's all free, which is nice. And we have some fantastic speakers lined up, including you were just accepted, even though you haven't received your acceptance email. I let you know just before we started here. To give a talk. So it's going to be great.
No, that's fantastic news and a great early Christmas present for everyone. Great timing.
Yeah, and it took we're trying to think of when we wouldn't compete with someone. Because obviously, at the time
that's hard.
We were just
events every month, isn't there?
Yeah, it's everywhere. And you're probably traveling quite a bit for shows around, and it's hard. So we picked the second week of December, because we figure, okay, that's when everything's winding down. People are slowing down for the holidays. And really, work is also slowing down about that time, because people don't really do a whole lot between the U.S. Thanksgiving and then Christmas. It starts slowing down. So we thought that was best. No travel. People can just hang out in their office and take their quote unquote, I'm doing air quotes now, you can't see, training. That way they can do that. And we're actually... last year, we had a lot of requests for the training credits because some companies...
CPE.
Yeah. So we're going to go ahead and try to make that happen this year. We haven't got all the T's crossed and the I's dotted as of yet. We're still working on that, making sure we're compliant with, the standard, which I don't know that there is some standard, and depending on whose CPE you refer to, but at least we'll have the certificate available. If somebody wants it, they'll be able to get credit for it.
And at least that way, that they're more likely to get clearance from a boss to attend training.
Right, exactly. Just hang out in the lab and watch their computer monitor.
Yeah, no, that's great. So obviously running these companies, Kevin, and I know you've been unfortunate dealing with incidents at home, but
Yeah.
what does a normal day look like for you?
Well, it's actually really nice. Uh, I'm just, what you think is traumatic that happens in your life of being let go from a job or downsizing of a company, which ultimately happened, which forced me into this decision. And I decided I didn't want to go back to corporate, which I thought was a horrific upturn of my life, has actually spun to something very, very blessed, because
Yeah,
now I wake up, and obviously it's fall. The kids are in school. I can wake up, go downstairs, pour my coffee, deal with the chaos of everyone running around, getting ready for school. I don't have to do that, get ready for anything. I'm sitting there just kind of enjoying the chaos as it happens. And then, send them all off to the bus stop, or my wife handles most of that. Bless her as well. She's the heavy lifter, and you've met her. And
yeah,
she keeps me in line. She tries her best, which is a job in itself. So she is a very tolerant woman. We'll leave it at that. And that's really, it starts off there, and then I'll finish my coffee, take the dog for a short walk in the yard, and then walk down one flight of stairs here to my basement where I'm at. And I apologize, it's probably a little echoey sounding. Normally, I'm an audio snob, and I have it treated a little bit better. But as you had mentioned, there was an unfortunate incident here. We had a pretty bad storm, and it was a flood. It flooded my basement. We've never had that happen in the 12 years I've been here. But hopefully there won't happen again. So I've just put the new floor in, and I don't have, like, I usually have a rug down or something like that where it's a little bit better. And my dog is normally in the office with me, so I come down here and I start my morning. I'll jump on the morning Zoom call with the team, because we do have actually a few full-time employees. That is, again, I never thought in a million years we'd be paying people to try to enjoy this ride as much as I have, but they seem to enjoy it too, and they're very good at what they do. If you've ever seen our podcast, you'll hear me talk about Megan and Abby often. They're really the success behind a
yeah,
lot of the things that happen for the company, and they do a phenomenal job for it. But that's really it. And we deal with a lot of different clients in the digital forensic space. So a lot of what we do for the primary company is we help those companies communicate with law enforcement, with investigators. So it depends on how much they want our help.
yeah,
Right? Some companies will hire us to be fractional CMOs. So we actually come in and manage their marketing department for them and guide their folks and kind of teach them. Our style is a little unique. Um, it's more, I don't know what I call it. I call it the common sense communication method. We don't try to sell, really. We just explain how a particular thing solves a particular thing.
yeah,
That's really, it's basic. Cops are,
yeah,
we're not the brightest bulbs in some cases. And, we just want the problem solved. It's like, hey, how can I solve this case? Please let me know how I can do that. And that's all I care about. And that's the way we communicate. So it's really simple. So it's really the day. And then, after work, and my kids, after they get home from school, they'll come down here in the office and say hi. And then I'll go upstairs. We all have dinner together. That's always been a requirement in the family. So the
yeah,
family has dinner together every evening, unless it's real chaotic and there's football and volleyball and all kinds of things going on for the littles. Um, but other than that, I'm just very blessed to be where I'm at and be in such an awesome community as the digital
yeah.
investigation space. Yeah, it's been a really fun ride.
That's awesome to hear. And you're right that this community is so unique. And like you say, from the people signing up to help out with Cyber Social Con, and just generally the people in the industry, it's so close knit. You can go to conferences, and I should imagine for you, Kevin, you could go to conferences globally, and people would know you, and people would instantly, or even if they didn't know you, the conversation is just there, isn't it? Because you've all faced the same problems, and yeah, it's very unique.
Yeah, and we get that. My wife travels with me to the shows, and she's usually running the actual booth itself if we have a booth at the show. And just telling people about Cyber Social Hub, trying to say, hey, do you want to sign up? It's all free. And of course, you get that typical cop look, right? That slanted
Yeah.
head tilting over, the eyebrows slightly raised, and the one eye is slanted versus the other. And they're just looking at her like, okay, what are you trying to pull here? You don't give, no one gives anything away for free. And that's what I'll look over at her and I'll kind of just slide in a little bit. And I'm like, you know what? You're right. And I said, you sign your soul away to us, really. That's what's happening.
Yeah.
It's just breaking through that crazy cop wall that has to be there. And once they find out I was law enforcement, or actually still hold my commission, I think it's been 26 years now
Yeah.
here in the U.S. But yeah, and it's been good for sure.
Yeah. I was having a chat with my colleague, Greg Masterson, who is similar to yourself, still holds that commission.
Yeah.
It's not something they do here in the UK. When I'd left law enforcement, it was badge is gone. I kept, you can see behind me, I've still got some police stuff on the shelf, but
yeah, excellent.
Because that was lost. So you never saw that, Kevin. That was lost when I was handing stuff back into stores. But no, you literally just walk away in the UK. It's quite sad.
Wow.
I've still remained obviously good friends with a lot of my colleagues who are still serving and some that have retired, but it does feel that it's a good thing the US is doing, because we walked away with a lot of years of experience,
Mm-hmm.
and to then not have access to that seems a huge shame for the country, really.
Right, and I know some agencies here in the U.S. require you to go back in and do a certain amount of hours on the road, or help out in the department. My chief, I've been through a couple different chiefs now, or head of the departments. They've all been. I've known them when I was actually a patrolman. So I don't know that the next chief will be that way. It's been a little while now, but all of them knew who I was, and so they don't require that. But we still got to go for annual certifications. We still have to keep up on. Here in the U.S., obviously, it's a little different. We all carry firearms, so we have to stay up on our qualifications. To make sure we can still kind of hit what we're aiming at, and trust me,
Roughly.
it makes it all sound cool when you see Hollywood and stuff like that, but it's nothing like that. It's quite a scary experience with some rookie officers in the range. It gets terrifying, but they'll eventually get it. So it's mainly a lot of just staying brushed up on laws, and that's the hardest part, because I'm not out there doing the work every day. And when they come to me and they say, "Hey, you have to take this domestic violence training," and I'm like, oh, really? Family violence type stuff? Yeah. Okay. So I sit through the class and I learn as best I can. So far, I haven't failed any of the certs, and it's been 12 years now. So it's okay.
That's good. And obviously, you still have a lot of interaction with the community. So even though you haven't sort of practiced for a long time, you still hear what's going on. What would you say are the biggest challenges that are facing forensic examiners out there nowadays?
I still think the basic problems are the same, and I think they've actually increased, and not because of any environmental situations or the landscape of digital investigations at all. It's just because the technologies themselves have come out a lot more rapidly. Just in the past 12 years, it's been pretty crazy. I mean, I have, like, right now I'm looking at a light switch on my wall that I know if I yelled at a certain A name device, which I won't do because it'll set everyone's off, is it can turn my lights on and off here in the room. And there's technology behind that can be investigated. And if you say that, hey, I was in my office between these hours, I can easily go pull logs to see, okay, hey, when was that light on? When was it off? There's a lot of things that people don't consider as part of technology. And it's, again, when I was practicing full time, it was computers and cell phones. That was the only two things that we were dealing with. Now you're dealing with drones. You're dealing with, IoT, which is in everything, absolutely everything. My home automation system I built myself, which is because the nerd in me inside of me has said you had to do it.
Well, they're not a big thing in the US, but here in the UK, obviously we're massive tea drinkers. So we have kettles, and I'll never forget seeing American friends and going to the house and asking for a cup of tea, and they can't make you one because they don't have a kettle. But where my story is going is my sister-in-law actually has a Wi-Fi kettle.
What?
Yeah. To me, you've still got to stand beside it to pour the cup of tea. So what is the point of being able to switch it on from a distance?
Yeah. I mean, I was impressed with just because obviously here in the U.S. we're big coffee drinkers. Whoa, about to knock some stuff off my desk. We're big coffee drinkers, but I do have Twinings tea, just for the record, here in my house, because when I was traveling a lot with another company, our offices were right there in Covent Gardens in London, and I was probably in London 10 times a year. My favorite city to travel abroad to by far. Now, I don't know what it's like now, but I'm assuming it's still pretty much the same, but I always don't like that. So I would always pick up Twinings tea. And you guys have proper Kinder eggs there as well. I don't know if they outlawed those yet, but the toys.
No, they're still not outlawed.
Good, because, as responsible humans, we know buying a Kinder egg, there's a toy inside and not to eat the stinking toy. But here in the U.S., they don't trust us. Yet they trust us with Mountain Dew and all this other stuff that's poisonous.
Well, the next time I come over to the US to a conference, I'm going to bring you a Kinder egg.
Oh, my kids love it. They are amazing. I used to get them all the time. I used to load boxes of them, and then you have to go through customs. Like, why are you bringing 1 million Kinder eggs back? Like, I'm not reselling them. I promise. This is a month's supply for my kids. So.
This is personal consumption.
That's right.
But yeah, I think you're right, really, with the challenge, because when I look back, we were mainly dealing with computers. That they were sort of the majority of lab work, and Windows and Macs back then really didn't push out as many updates. So we knew the playing field. Mm-hmm. We knew what artifacts we were looking for. Whereas the explosion of like IoT, like you say, vehicle forensics as well, everything can hold evidence in most houses, and there's an abundance of them. It's not just one computer in a back bedroom anymore. It's literally an entire search team would each fill bags each. And the job was hard enough before with the amount of data to sift through. And it's just, we used to go into people's houses and they had more storage than we had on our own forensic machines.
Right.
And of course, then you've got to make evidential copies of that. Then you've got to extract image and videos from that. And so that you may image a guy's 8 terabyte drive, but you could end up with 30 terabytes of output from it. And I just feel sorry for my ex-colleague still doing the role, because it's such a hard role. And with encryption and access issues, it's just getting harder, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when the flip phones were out, and they keep adding these different levels of locks on them back in the day. And they thought back then that it was the end of mobile phones. We're not going to be able to get data. Then the next year, a new level of encryption or lock would come out. This is the end. And here we are all these years later with these more power in a mobile phone than landed on the moon for the first time, if it really happened. So I have to throw my jokes in. In the palm of our hand, and we're still able, for the most part, to get the data that we need. So I don't know if it will ever get done or not, but just there's so many more options, or so many more things an examiner has to consider for simply just a computer. Right now, there's obviously the cloud storage has become much more prevalent than storing locally than in anywhere else. And here in the U.S., paperwork is a challenge, especially when you're dealing with servers overseas. Is trying to get the information, because they just look at our request as like, then we have to go through Europol, and then it's challenging. I'm sure it's similar to over in Europe, in the UK. See how I separated that out for you, because you're not technically.
Yeah, you did.
See, all right. Yeah. I remember when all that was going on. And then coming here to the U.S. to try to get that information as well is probably pretty challenging now. It's just, I feel bad. Like you, I feel bad for the investigators of present, because we were overloaded back then. I could only imagine the workload that they're facing today.
So on that positive note, I'd like to ask the next question. And that is, from your experience, what advice would you give to people who are considering or who have just started in this industry?
Be a firefighter. That's no, so if you're just starting in the industry, there's a few things that I think an examiner or digital investigator, I like to call them digital investigators now. You've heard me say that several times. And let me kind of backtrack a little bit, Nick, before I answer that question and tell you why. Because we used to just call them computer forensic examiners. Well, that's not the case anymore. And then there were mobile phone examiners. Well, that's can't be just that anymore. So I just said, hey, we're digital investigators. Until they find another way to not call it digital, I think we're safe with that. With that
covers the entire medium.
Yes, and because there's OSINT now that kind of falls sometimes in our realm, which not fully, but it does. But with that, what I tell examiners is be curious. That's really one of the most important things, because I think it's easier to teach the technology to someone than it is to teach curiosity. And if you don't have a natural curiosity of how things work, like when I was a kid, I used to take apart the old 8-track players just to see how they worked. And, was successful, most cases, putting it back together. Then you're going to have a rough time if you don't have that natural curiosity. You'll get frustrated quickly, because it's, although a lot of digital exams and investigations are similar, they're never the same. There's always something different you have to achieve or do. There's always some basic information you have to grab, but then there's that slight difference that, hey, there's no training for this in these basic classes I took. And there may be no training for the experience that you're seeing it right in front of you. So you have to be curious, and you have to be willing to try to figure it out yourself. And then once you do figure it out, find somebody to verify what you found that's equally as curious. And then release that out to the public, or make your class, teach other people, give back. It really has to be a give and take type of relationship in this world, because you're not going to know everything. I've been in the industry a really long time. My first digital forensic experience was, I think, 2002. So it's been a while at this point, but you always have to be willing to let your pride down, because there's a chance you're going to be wrong often. Which, admitting that is rough sometimes with the A type personality of most law enforcement. And even if you're not in law enforcement, you still have to have that to, have a colleague peer review it, and don't be upset of what they say to you. It's going to happen. You'll learn, make it a learning experience for yourself. And then when you figure something out, you have to be willing to give back to the community, create a talk. Heck, if you have something and you want to talk, Adam will have you probably on his podcast, I'm sure, how to do something. If not, come into Cyber Social Hub, share what you have. We're happy to post it for you. That's why we exist. And that's really the best advice, is just be curious of how things work and be willing to share your findings.
And that echoes back into what we were saying about this community, about how special it is. And but no, that's great advice. Then, just before I let you go, because it's very early for you, you're on coffee number 1 probably, so you're going to need a short one soon. As a final question, I always ask my previous guest to set the question. Now, my previous guest was my old podcast host from Chewing the Fat, Phil Cobley, who, similar to yourself, he now is an instructor for like a vendor-neutral company where he delivers computer, mobile, all sorts of different types of training. But one thing that we used to do on our previous podcast, we used to do a forensic faux pas. And this is where an opportunity to ask embarrassing things that you've done in your career during forensics, just to show how that we're all human. So, for example, on the previous one, Heather Mahalik shared how she was in her first week and dropped a load of hard drives onto her foot. And just little things like that, or somebody wiped their own or imaged their own drive with Encase. Can you think of one, or you?
I can think of one for a friend of mine. It was actually a colleague that worked the lab part-time. I don't.
Well,
And I,
well, that's good as long as we leave them unnamed.
yeah, we're gonna leave him unnamed, and if he's listening, he'll know right away. Me calling me shortly. He's down in Florida now, but I
So
was,
he's happy then.
yeah, he's retired. He's happy. I was going through a suspect machine, completely unrelated to my colleague, and my colleague, who's now married to this person I'm about to talk about. I'm trying not to accidentally say a name, and they like to go to the bike weeks. I don't know if you've ever been to the Harley Davidson type bike weeks. They get a little wild. I personally, let me lead with this. I have never been to one.
I've been to a
Yeah,
Pike Fest in Ocean City,
yeah,
and that was quite unique. I've never seen anything like that before.
yeah. They went to one. I think it was called Sturgis. I think one of the big ones. And I'm going through a suspect machine, and of course, it was an image related. And I'm looking and I'm looking, and obviously hung out with my colleague and his now wife often, and up comes images, and there she is showing parts that you wouldn't normally see. Oh my god! And if you could see my face now, which I know you could see, Adam, is I turned red as can be. I'm yelling his name. I'm like, get over here! And you think he would be mortified the fact that I'm doing an investigation, an official investigation, and there is his, at the time was his girlfriend. I don't believe they were married yet, but they are now, and showing her women parts.
Yeah.
And his response, he just starts dying laughing. I think it's the funniest thing in the world. So yeah, that's really the only crazy story. Is digital forensics was not all that exciting. I have other fun SWAT stories and all that other stuff, but
Yeah.
and sliding in a poor gentleman's brains as he was on the floor once, and I fell in it. It was really disgusting, but nothing to do with digital forensics. Those types of stories, yeah.
But no, I think the reason Phil asked that, we always used to like to do it for people who are new in the industry to make them realise that we have all made mistakes. You're going to make mistakes, and you just need to learn from them.
Right.
But yeah, I think that was a message Phil was trying.
Right. Oh, I was looking for a fun story. Mistake stories. I don't tend to admit to those too much. I'm sure it happened often, especially with imaging in the early days before, bad sector detection was a thing, and being to skip that. But I'm sure there were more cases than I can remember. It's been so long now that maybe something was improper, or maybe I concluded something incorrectly. I hope not. Oh my gosh, I hope not, for the sake of people that got convicted. I really hope not. That's a horrible thing to possibly think. But yeah, mistakes happen, and my advice to that is don't be afraid to make them.
Yeah.
You're gonna make them. Just don't make them. Don't lie on the stand is the most important thing.
Yeah.
We had a gentleman we knew that would just flat out lie about information, and I've seen it in the industry more than one time where they think they're just that confident and they just say something completely unvalidated.
Yeah.
So I haven't seen it in a while. Hopefully,
but you're right. We all make mistakes. If you make a mistake during your processes, then just record the fact that you made a mistake, and then people accept it. If you try and hide that mistake or fabricate it, then once they find it, it's going to make it a lot worse for you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because I was told I have many mentors. I think I was still in patrol. He said, "Your word on the stand is the only thing you have, really, because if you lose that, if the judge or the jury can't believe you, then why are you still doing this job? Why?
Yeah.
Why?"
No.
Yeah.
Words of wisdom.
Yeah,
right there.
From much wiser people than myself. But
right.
I try to retain all of those tidbits from people as we go through this crazy thing called life.
But no, that's great, Kevin. And I just want to take this opportunity thanking you for giving up your time so early in the day. And I always enjoy talking with you, whether it's at conferences, over events, and I'm sure the audience is going to really appreciate your time as well. But yeah, thank you very much, Kevin. And I will virtually see you in December.
Excellent. Yeah, I will see you then. Thanks so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. It's been an honor.
Thank you. Bye-bye.